Asians are inherently conservative. I think the saying is that if you scratch an Asian underneath his skin, he's blue.
Scratch any true blue Tory MP and he's white through and through. The black and Asian vote, once regarded as in Labour's pocket, is beginning to diversify. But while there are some Labour MPs from the ethnic minorities, the Conservative benches are still all white. At the last general election, Nurj Deva came within 3,000 votes of being the first Asian Conservative MP for more than 80 years. He insists there is a match between Conservative values and those of the Asian community.
Family values, religious education, a good education, profit, business, saving money, buying your own home. All these things are conservative things. Looking after your family, looking after your grandparents and uncles and aunts. It's a traditional conservative, both with a big C and a little c, set of values.
It's not too fanciful to say that in a closely fought general election, the votes of Britain's black and Asians could be decisive. Both main parties have been slow to solicit that support. At Conservative headquarters, that job has now fallen to Charles Wardle MP.
Amongst many of our Asian friends in this country, there are traditions of enterprise that go way back into history, way back beyond our own immediate history in this country. And I think it's a wonderful thing that those traditions are being brought in and merged with our own ideas of enterprise and are succeeding.
Among Asians, Gujaratis in particular have prospered and moved towards the Conservative Party. Urdu and Bengali speakers perhaps less so. And while some in the ethnic minorities are happy to embrace the enterprise culture, others remain suspicious.
To me, they're making the rich richer and the poorer poorer, because right now I'm feeling it hard.
No, I never vote Conservative.
I'd like to see the Conservative Party put more effort into promoting black people into the MPs and get more MPs for local areas.
It doesn't matter about the colour, as in if we've got a black MP, that doesn't mean he's going to work for black people. He could be working against black people.
But one thing is evident. However well the Conservatives may now be doing among the Asian community, among Afro-Caribbeans the party is making next to no impact.
Well, I think it's fair to say that in the West Indian communities in this country, in many of our inner cities, there is still an overwhelming socialist ethos.
It's young blacks, of course, who bear the brunt of racial discrimination, who feel most alienated from the political process. Those few West Indians who are active Conservatives tend to be older, their political allegiances fixed perhaps before they settled in Britain. Blair Greaves, a Jamaican, is a businessman and a Conservative councillor in North London.
I, being a member of the Conservative Party for over 30 years, and the early days was much more bitter and raw against us as black peoples. But of course, in the not too distant future, this narrowness of conservatism will go. The more of us black and minority people who join the Conservative Party, not being invited, but just that we know that we have a contribution to make.
The Conservative Party cannot always have seemed welcoming to blacks and Asians. It's always been tough on immigration, and some Conservatives have given the impression that the best way of avoiding any race problem was to keep Britain white. It was once the party of Enoch Powell.
I have stated my conviction that physical and violent conflict must sooner or later supervene where an indigenous population sees no end to the progressive occupation of its heartland by aliens with whom they do not identify themselves and who do not identify themselves with them.
Enoch Powell, with his emotive language, was disowned by the Conservative leadership. But in 1978, just before her first election victory, Mrs Thatcher made a remark still remembered and resented by black and Asian community leaders. Interviewed on commercial television, Mrs Thatcher said many people felt overwhelmed. Swamped was the word she used, by the increasing number of immigrants.
People are really rather afraid that this country might be rather swamped by people with a different culture. And you know, the British character has done so much for democracy, for law, and done so much throughout the world, that if there's any fear that it might be swamped, people are going to react and be rather hostile to those coming in. So if you want good race relations, you've got to allay people's fears on numbers.
Although recently ennobled by Mrs Thatcher, Lady Flather, a long-standing Conservative who last month became the first Asian peeress, is critical of that swamped remark.
I think Mrs. Thatcher made that remark without actually realizing what the impact of it was going to be. And my sadness is that she hasn't then, after that, made a speech on race relations. I think she became very nervous about it, and she has kept away from making any speeches on that subject. On the other hand, I think Enoch Powell knew very well what he was saying. I think he thought about it very carefully, and I think he is much more culpable than ever Mrs. Thatcher could possibly be.
As primary immigration has tailed off, Conservative sensitivities about race have also diminished. No longer the podium-thumping anti-immigrant speeches at the Conservative conference. But it remains an emotive issue, one exploited by a former Conservative Party chairman, Norman Tebbit, during parliamentary debates earlier this year about the prospect of an influx from Hong Kong.
I merely state that if we are not to see social upheaval arising from religious and cultural and ethnic differences, then we have more than enough to do to integrate existing communities into British society without adding to that burden nor exacerbating existing problems.
In a sense, though, what was surprising about Norman Tebbit's remarks was that they failed to ignite any wider passions. A much more serious threat to community relations came from the Salman Rushdie affair and the support some British Muslims gave to the Ayatollah's fatwa against a British citizen. It's highlighted questions of divided loyalties in a way which Nerj Diva considers unfortunate.
It's been quite damaging, actually, because it's been a muddle. It's polarised the community in a way it ought not to have. The British Muslims must recognise that they're British first.
But then Nerj Diva agrees with Norman Tebbit's cricket test that, once settled here, ethnic minorities should cheer for England, not India, Pakistan or the West Indies. Mohammed Khamisa, on the other hand, a barrister and prospective Conservative candidate, sees a positive side to the Rushdie controversy.
The one thing that it has demonstrated is that they're prepared to make representations to the highest level. They're prepared to get involved politically within domestic politics. And I suppose if there's one positive thing to come out of this entire business, it shows that the Asians are prepared to be heard, are prepared to be heard on issues which concern them.
The Conservative Party proclaims itself colourblind about race. During the 1983 election campaign, it published a poster of a young Afro-Caribbean with the slogan, "Labour says he's black, Tories say he's British." But why, if we're all the same, did the Conservatives once have separate associations for the various minority communities? The biggest, the Anglo-Asian Conservative Society, was taken over in the mid-80s by Sikh separatists. Conservative headquarters promptly shut down the society. Charles Wardle concedes it was not a happy episode.
The Anglo-Asian Conservative Society was closed down back in history. I think that took place in 1985 because of some excitement over an election that took place that wasn't played by the rules. And the party took the opportunity then to say, wouldn't it be better, rather than having separate groups, wouldn't it be better to bring all our ethnic community interests together under one banner? And that is precisely what we're doing.
The new body is called the One Nation Forum. Charles Wardle is its chairman. Membership is by invitation. It's only now establishing local branches. But why was the Anglo-West Indian Conservative Society, which Blair Greaves helped to found, also closed down to make way for the new organisation?
Information received was that, of course, us as the Anglo-West Indian Conservative Society, were doing a sterling work. We knew that. We were approached from the party chairman at the time, who was Norman Tebbit, I must say that discussion was afoot for a change from the Anglo-West Indian, the Anglo-Asian. They were going to amalgamate all into one group, which was called the One Nation Forum. I must be honest with you, when we were approached and told that, we weren't very happy.
Weren't the Conservative Party headquarters emasculating the role of ethnic minorities within the party, saying, right, we'll let you have a little bit of a voice, but we'll decide who has that voice, and we won't allow you to have a power base?
You've put that reasonably well, although this sort of power base we had, unfortunately, it's gone. The underlying word is unfortunately. We are prepared, we are determined to play just the same role.
The One Nation Forum has so far failed in what must be its main objective, to get a black or Asian selected and then elected as a Conservative MP. When Sheila Flather took her seat in the Lords last month, she was the first Asian to sit on the Conservative benches in either House of Parliament since 1906. But when are we going to see an Asian Conservative in the Commons?
I think it's my expectation that there will be one after the next election. But it is getting a little close to the election, I have to accept that. But, we all hope that sooner rather than later.
But there's no sign of it, is there, next time round? Not one Asian selected for a winnable seat?
No, I have to accept that, not yet.
But why hasn't Charles Wardle just got on the phone and told local party officials to choose black and Asian candidates?
I haven't gone round saying to constituency chairmen, you must pick this candidate or that candidate, because if I did, I would be laughed out of the room. There is no social engineering in this. But I put it to you that by bringing members of the ethnic minorities into officerships of our branches, associations, area groups and other bodies within the National Union, that is the way in which they will have the best springboard to influence their fellow members of the party when seeking adoption as candidates.
Labour already has 4 black and Asian MPs. One is already on the front bench, though Labour's leadership is continuing to resist demands for separate black sections. The Conservatives have 3 ethnic minority candidates in place, all Asians, none with a fighting chance of winning. Nurj Deva, who came so close to victory last time round, has been touring the country looking for a safe Conservative seat. What's the reaction of Conservative selection committees in well-heeled rural areas when confronted by an Asian aspirant to be their next MP?
Wonderment. What is he doing here in this hunting, shooting, fishing country with a thumping majority? Why isn't he trying to find some urban seat where there are more blacks and Asians? It is difficult for the selectors because at the back of their heads they sometimes think, I like this chap. He may be an Asian or he may be black, but I like him, he's qualified. But would my Aunt Matilda down the road like him, and would she vote for him?
While such attitudes persist, potential Conservative supporters in the minority communities might decide not to vote at all. A general election is less than 2 years away. It will be the most bitterly fought for many years. Any party which turns its back on well over 1 million black and Asian voters does so at its peril.